Mm, I love that intro. Again, shout out to JC. Appreciate you, sir, for giving us that new intro for this season. This is your boy JR coming to you live, TSA Hoop Show that we like to present to you every Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. However, we're coming to you a special time today because life happens, and we wanted to make sure to give you guys a full show today. So we were taking care of some things off screen, getting back into it. Hopefully you guys are freshly caffeinated by this time this morning. Cheers to you all. Before we get too deep into anything, before we start off anything, I just want to give a special shout out to all the folks in Carolina right now. They're fighting these huge wildfires. As a resident of a state that consistently and constantly has battled them for years on end, is always in the news one way or another because of such epic tragedies. I mean, we just had one of our own with the Palisades. Thoughts and prayers and best energy goes out to all the folks fighting those fires, trying to save homes, trying to save lives out there in Carolina. So hopefully you guys are doing all right. And with that being said, y'all, we got time today. It's time to talk about playoffs, y'all. We're going to continue our talk from last week about playoffs are heating up. Awards are ready to be given out. Things are slightly shaking up, and we're seeing some crazy endings to some games. Y'all couldn't talk enough about the Lakers getting beat by the Bulls twice within about 10 days' time. So, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we are going to get to some other teams because, again, the playoffs now involve 10 teams on each side. We got to talk about the play-in, the implications of where these teams end up at, between the Bulls getting their recent late game stretch wins to try to push themselves and get themselves further into they're not out of contention for a playoff spot. They're mathematically not done yet. They would have to completely win out for that to happen, and other teams would have to drop, of course, but we'll talk about that a little bit. We talked about the Miami Heat last segment, and Miami Heat must have gotten word or wind of what we said because they've been winning as well. And on the other side, we have some teams that have made playoffs. They're locked in for the postseason, but where they're going to be seated at, a lot of these wins and losses over the last week are going to heavily cement or shake up the standings. So, guys, buckle up. Let's get going. Again, it's your boy JR. If you guys have not tuned into us before, this is the Sports Affiliations TSA Hoop Show. I am your host, JR. If you have not been tuning in with us every Sunday for the past season and a half, this is where you get your info. This is where the fun starts. This is where the magic happens. This is how the sausage is made. So, guys, get ready. Strap yourself in. We have been talking about playoffs. We've been talking about season-ending awards. We're going to recap some things that have happened this week. I got some head-scratching stuff. I think we scratched our head enough about LeBron James in that last end of the game sequence. I think we just go ahead and skip over that because the media will talk to you about it enough. And I think we hear about that particular player and other media assets not to be named. And we promise you guys, we're going to talk about basketball. We don't get into the drama. So we're going to skip all that other stuff. Let's get into hoops, baby. So let's just go ahead and show you guys right now where we are at with the standings, because some of you guys jump right over from football. You skip basketball a little bit. You have a little bit of football towards you get the Super Bowl February, and then you're like, oh, let me kind of peek in on the All-Star game for NBA, see what they're talking about. And then you skip right to baseball, understandably so. But while you guys are trying to figure out exactly what's going on, let's just go ahead and give you what the playoffs look like today. All right. So as you can see here, if the playoffs ended today, we talked a lot about these two teams, got the Thunder and the Cavs right there at the 1 seed. There's talk about the Thunder possibly getting the 70 wins. Less than 10 games to go. Got to take a look at the schedule for the Thunder, but it is quite possible that this team could just backward step into 70 wins, being one of 3 teams that have eclipsed the 70 win total in the NBA season in history. That includes the 72 win Chicago Bulls, the 73 win Golden State Warriors, and then that may include the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have MVP candidate and right now MVP leading candidate Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We're going to get into all the changes that they made. Absolutely phenomenal. The Cavaliers, who were leading in this season at one point, and I thought the way that they had came out the gate when they had 20-something straight during the season, that they were on pace to beat the Oklahoma City outright and beat the Golden State Warriors 73 win season. The Cavs were on pace to have that type of season, and we talked about their losses throughout the season, but they're still leading number 1 overall. The slight possibility of the Celtics at the number 2 seed catching them, but they're probably the only team that has a possibility, the Boston Celtics, of changing where their standing is at, as far as whether being a host team for part of the playoffs or for a majority of the playoffs. It makes a big difference if you're a really good home win team like the Celtics are. Other side, got the Rockets at the 2 seed there. You can see that 3 right now in the West, the Nuggets. We talked a lot about them at the beginning of the season. Haven't talked about them enough throughout the season. We're going to get to them in a second. The Knicks, on the other hand, we talked a bit about them. I promised some guys in the chat, since the Brunson injury, because we've gone completely quiet about the Knicks, we're going to have to talk about how these Knicks have been winning without him, how that's been helping them, because the Knicks are in the postseason. They're not just in the postseason, but they're guaranteed a playoff spot, not a play-in spot, playoff spot. Complete difference. 4 seeds right now. You got the Lakers, who are just like their Eastern Conference comparative. The Indiana Pacers. We don't know which team we're going to get. I cannot say for sure. We are guaranteed to give you some results for 1 or 2 players on that team. Don't know what the result is going to be from that 4-seeded team, 5-seeded team. The Memphis Grizzlies, we're going to have a whole segment about, and I'm actually going to mention someone, an X account that I follow that got into it, and I'm going to post that account in the chat so that way you guys can see the video, and then you guys can do a deep dive into the Grizzlies like I did. But we're going to get into the Grizzlies because you have them on the West. It's yin and yang today. Grizzlies on one end, who fired their coach with less than 10 games to go in the season. On the other side, you have the Pistons, who probably have the coach of the year in JB. We're going to get to them. Six spot. Clippers and Bucks, 2 teams that we have big question marks about. Those are if the playoffs end today, those are the teams that are in the playoffs. And then the play-in games, East and West. We talked about the 9-10 spot. We're going to talk about the Bulls. We're going to talk a little bit about the Heat, because again, I'm not a fan of that game. It's 1 game, and either one of those teams basically qualify to try to get in for that next game. The the way that the Bulls are playing, I would rather see the Bulls continue on and go and finish it out and get into the playoffs and then get eliminated versus them going this far and doing like they did last season and sputtering out. 7th, 8th seed Magic, who after last season's performance and then getting the 5th seed in the playoffs, you would have thought that they would have did a little bit better job than they have this season, but injuries and whatnot, that Paolo Banchero injury, the early middle part of the season definitely changed the trajectory of this team. The Atlanta Hawks, who are hosting defensive player, my pick, defensive player of the year, Dyson Daniels right now. They were on a heater. They were about the 4 seed. They had that one win against Boston at the very beginning of the season. Sort of been tumultuous since then. And on the other side, Mavs. Can't talk enough about them. The Kings. Talk about that firing of their head coach early on in the season and where they're at the 10 spot right now. The Warriors at the 7th seed and the 8th seed, the Timberwolves. You don't see one team there in the West. It's the Phoenix Suns, who we seem to talk about nonstop as to what in the heck is going on. We're going to get into all of it right now. That's the update so far as to where everyone is at. Hopefully you guys are live up in the comments. Antonio 20, what up? Good morning. For wherever you're at and where you're watching from, let's get into it. Okay, guys. So what is life other than a ball going in the net and being able to enjoy it from the sidelines, or being the person that put the ball in the hole yourself? Shout out to the Oklahoma City Thunder for basically demolishing the season. These guys are just about done with the season. And of course, this is the 2nd season in a row that they're going to have the number 1 seed. They're going to have another chance at being able to host the NBA Finals. And this is another possibility of this team flaming out. They have of course changed their outlook on how they're playing. I think that after last year of getting absolutely demolished down the middle, only having Chet Holmgren with all of his capability and his agility as a big man, the size was definitely a big factor. And the way that Isaiah Hartenstein had played for New York, I think that's the reason why they went out and got him. They were heavily dependent on Josh Giddey in sets. They never really had a good offensive set for him, which is why you saw that switch from essentially offense to defense for a veteran like Alex Caruso. They've heavily empowered their rookies and their two-way guys to be able to bolster their ability to win. So they're a deep team. They're a deep playoff team. They're a young team. And of course, they're being led by SGA. And these guys are at, again, 62-12. So I say the worst they could do is 68. They have upcoming. Tomorrow they got Chicago Bulls at home, which we're going to get to in a second. Then they get Detroit again at home. Then they go on a mini road trip. They go over to Houston real quick to play the Rockets, number 2 seed. Playoff implications right there. And playoff implications in the sense of, like, there are teams you don't want to drop games against, so you don't want to give hints to as to how to beat you. And I think that the Houston Rockets are a team that are trying to make sure that they know how they want to perform in the playoffs. Again, this is sort of like, I'll call it a year and a half, because Ime Udoka came in, he built this team up, had a lot of signings, had a lot of changes within the team. They've empowered Şengün to sort of be the engine that runs that team. The way that they've been running they had ran teams early into the ground early with their defense at the beginning of the year was stifling to say. They had some injuries throughout this season, so they've been up and down throughout the standings for the season. But I think as a team that could possibly be the other Western Conference Finals representative. I'm not saying that they will be, but as a possibility, if you're Houston, you're trying to play everybody so that we can learn how to beat this Oklahoma City team. Oklahoma City, on the other hand, is playing with house money. They have a 14 game lead over the number 2 spot. There are not enough games to make up for it. Oklahoma City Thunder are hosting the West. That's it. Okay. That's done. That's signed, sealed, delivered. Okay. But just because you're hosting the West, again, history is, if we haven't learned anything from history, is that seeding doesn't matter. Between going all the way back to, I always mention this, the Dallas Mavericks years ago being that 60-win team, losing it as a 1 seed, going all the way forward to the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis Antetokounmpo, number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks, losing to the 8th seeded Miami Heat. And most recently, Oklahoma City Thunder, number 1 seed overall, does not make it past the second round. So if you're Houston, you see a little, if God bleeds, as soon as you see that, sharks smell blood in the water, you have to go after it. And I think Houston, that might be one of those games where Houston could possibly take that from them. But then here's an interesting part. You have 2 home games against the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, we talked about LA, and again, we're possibly trying to get 8 wins to get to 70. Playoff implications suggest that the Lakers would finish out at worst with, let's see, they're at 74 games right now. So with 8 games to go, they would finish at the play-in spot. If all play-in teams continue to win and the Lakers continue to lose, they would finish at worst at the 8th spot, which is not where they want to be, of course. But if you're the Lakers, you're hustling, trying to play everybody. If you're Los Angeles, if you're Oklahoma City, what are you doing at that point? So are you chasing history, or are you doing the thing that everyone else does? And, let's just go ahead and put a couple of these games away. The problem with that is now belief. Belief is a very strong motivational tool. You give anyone a puncher's chance. What was that saying that Jimmy Butler had with the Heat a while ago? Don't let us get one. You can't give. I think that at least one of those 2 games you're playing and you're trying to remind the West, and specifically the Lakers, you may see in a conference finals, given the way that the seeding is right now. Actually, no, you can see them in the semi-conference finals. Again, you just earned playoffs throughout the rest of the West. And if everything ended today, throughout the whole playoffs, throughout the NBA Finals as well. Do you want a team like the Lakers in your way? Possibly not. So if you have the opportunity to knock them down a couple of pegs or a couple of playoff spots, to put them in a position to have to go through somebody else, make them somebody else's problem, it's possible that you're actually going to play some players. You're not thinking about the 70-win total. You're not thinking about anything else but playing the team in front of you and winning. So to go Rockets, Lakers is a very, considering now that we know the things about the teams that we know now, it's very tough for Oklahoma City. And then conversely, if you're the Lakers, appreciate you, JC. You're trying to you're trying to get as much as you can out of the season and get everyone ready as best as possible. You just lost back-to-back games against play-in teams. One of them being the Chicago Bulls. You lost 2 against the Bulls. In fact, one a very handily loss. Of course, all starters coming back. Very sporadic defense, poor defense. In fact, lost that game by almost about 20 points. Second game, of course, we know the ending of how that game went with Josh Giddey's half-court heave. Great shot, by the way, Giddey. And you finally get your get-back game against Memphis Grizzlies team who just fired their head coach, whose star and Ja Morant has not been 100% since December, I believe, with that shoulder injury. You're trying to make sure that everyone is 100% ready to go. And right now, it doesn't look like that. Yeah, the Lakers finally found a way to sustain a fourth quarter lead. Yeah, they finally found a way to keep a team under 100 points. But the fourth quarter woes still look the same. And so if you're the Lakers, I think you're looking and smelling a little bit desperate right now. So if you're Oklahoma City, do you want to give the Lakers a team that right now is built on futures, possibility, hope, and building? Do you want to give that type of team any hope? It's bad enough that the media isn't talking about you enough if you're Oklahoma City. It's bad enough that the NBA doesn't put you in enough games when you're the number one seed overall. This is where the playoffs are going. Maybe you should feature that team a lot more, NBA. Side note. I don't know. I think if you're OKC, you snuff this out before it gets to a 5-alarm blaze. Rest of the schedule for OKC. They go to Phoenix. Team trying to figure it out. Utah Jazz, mathematically eliminated now. They're done for the season. And then they end with the New Orleans Pelicans, who they tried. The Pelicans tried. Zion tried. These guys tried. They tried to do it. And that's a team that in the Pelicans that's not tanking. They're not. They're just not. They're actually trying to play some games. They're trying to get their guys healthy. They're trying to figure out what type of team they have. And so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They got to go 8 for 8. Eight for 8 to end the season. Is it possible for the Oklahoma City Thunder to do that and win out? I think not. I think it'll be very tough. I don't think it would make much sense to try to go for that, but it would behoove me if the NBA did not switch its schedule to possibly flex in Oklahoma City games to be the team on TV if they inch closer and closer to 70 wins. Sorry, mother-in-law just boarded her plane. That's what we were doing this morning. We were getting her to the airport. Shout out to the other TSA. You guys are great at Mineta Airport, San Jose. So that's the 1 seed right there. Historic implications, playoff implications for all their opponents. Okay, Houston's still trying to stay ahead of Denver. So let's talk about the 2 and 3 real quick, who are separated by a game and a half. So if you're the Houston Rockets, of course, one of those games is against the Oklahoma City Thunder, whom you know that you're going to end up seeing if you continue this trend and you go, and if the playoffs just go the way that you feel that they should go, the top seeds winning, of course, you're going to see the Oklahoma City Thunder. You're going to want to try to get one of those games early on so you can learn something. But you also want to make sure that you have as many home games as possible. Because this team, just go ahead and pull up the record real quick. I'll go ahead and share this with you guys. All right, so right now, win-loss. They are as good of a home team as they are a road team. And I want to mention that because If you are the 2 seed, you get home court advantage at least through the conference finals. I wouldn't want to give that up. I mean, forget the teams that I've played. So their upcoming schedule, final games 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. They're also on 8 games left. Phoenix trying to make playoffs. Lakers trying to make playoffs. Oklahoma City made playoffs. Golden State trying to avoid the play-in. Clippers at the 6th seed right now. Lakers again and Denver. Houston has by far, though, one of the highest strength of schedules to end the playoffs. If this team manages to continue their winning ways, of course they're on a 2-game winning streak right now against a couple teams that aren't really there. They're not playoff worthy teams per se, but I mean, you're looking at the standings right now. Again, game and a half, and one of those games is against Denver. 2 of those games are against this team right here. 3 games separate the 2 to 4 spot. 4 games separate the 5 to 2 spot. It's a lot of jumping around if you're Houston. Do you say, oh, we made the postseason as that symbol suggests right there? I think it's a half and half scenario. You got to look at the team that you have if you're Ime Udoka, and you have to say if this is our year or not, and how you can best make lemonade out of this. That's one way to look at it. I think if you're trying to not only cement your job, but have people fear who the Houston Rockets are or how they were at the start of the season, and remind people that, oh yeah, I was a coach of the Boston Celtics before they won that championship. I'd say you try to get the most out of this team right now and blow through 75% of those games. Cement that 2 seed, and one of those games, put the screws to Denver. I don't care if they rest their starters or not. Put the screws to them. And say, hey, you may think that it may be fun with you talking about how many times you beat the Lakers and how many times you've been to the playoffs, and yeah, you were a champion years ago. We're putting the screws to you. We're the Houston Rockets. We're flying over everybody. Fly through them, go through them like a hot knife through butter, get to the conference finals, and then remind people why you're the number 2 seed if you're the Houston Rockets. Denver Nuggets. We're going to get to the Denver Nuggets, and then we're going to flip over to the East. We're going to take a break from the West for a second. Denver Nuggets, again, game and a half behind Houston right now. Their final. We already mentioned there's one against Houston. They're on a 2-game winning streak, too. They beat Milwaukee, okay? Which is a very tough team to beat offensively. Saying a lot. And some of these games, keep in mind, Nikola Jokic is rested, which is why they're in the position that they're at right now. To be able to rest the best player in the NBA right now and still get wins, to be able to showcase, like the Lakers are showcasing Austin Reeves, we'll call him the 4th best player for now, because it's only been 1 year over. 1 year removed from his time in the playoffs from last year. But Christian Braun has been absolutely phenomenal. The way that they've been showcasing Russell Westbrook, who's been amazing in spots, in the perfect spots for this team, to be able to do all that, still flip Michael Porter Jr., keep him healthy in and out, and Aaron Gordon, to be able to have him improve his 3-point shot. Shout out to the Denver Nuggets staff for doing all this, to be able to do this in games where they also had a 22 assist game. Still, I don't know how you guys are counting assists, but that's still Still stupid. That's getting a lot of people. If you're Nikola Jokic, okay, to be able to do that and still be at the third spot, I think it's an amazing job. Not quite the job that I believe that Detroit has done, but still an amazing job. So to close out their season, they have 7 to go. Minnesota, San Antonio, Golden State, Indiana, Sacramento, Memphis, and Houston as the last game. 1, 2, 3 of those games might not have to play Jokic in order to win. San Antonio wouldn't be shut down for the season. Those guys are just about San Antonio is not mathematically eliminated from the play-in spot, but they've also shut down De'Aaron Fox for the season with that thumb injury. I mean, what are you gonna do with Chris Paul, Vassell, and company, and Stephon Castle? Not really gonna make a deep playoff run. You can make some noise, get some guys some experience. So, all right, by that time, it's April 2nd. Possibly shut it down then. Sacramento, they're in the play-in. Do they want to be there is the question, because you brought guys over to be playoff worthy, and then the guys that you paired them with left. I don't really know what that team in Sacramento is doing right now, because beyond the firing and the inconsistency that we've seen from this team from an offensive and defensive perspective, the best thing about them has been a consistent double-double machine in Domantas Sabonis. And then right after that, then you get DeMar DeRozan. And I mean, it's like a 1-2, but those are the best things about the season. I don't like that about this team, because they went from, dang, this is a really hard team to beat in the playoffs, to this. And they're in the 9th seed, and we don't know what the 9th seed really looks like, because there are 3 teams battling for 2 spots right now in Sacramento, Dallas, and Phoenix. So I think that that's a team that Denver can beat easily. And then we saw between either the April 6th game, which is coming up, and I'll show you guys that right now. Let's just go ahead and share that, so that way you guys know what I'm talking about. Between this April 6th game at home versus Indiana, 4 seed right now in the East, Indiana's having a really interesting, they're having a good, if this were any other season, I believe they'd be a 2 or 3 seed. We'd be talking about them as a potential threat in the playoffs. But given how they perform well, almost like a B+, but it's like a quiet B+, like a backdoor, I think they benefit from their schedule, or who they scheduled against, and they go on these nice little streaky runs. I don't trust Indiana to put out its best effort going towards the end of the season. I believe that they feel that they're pretty comfortable with their spot in the 4 spot, that they like where they can go from there, that they have a lot of potential as a team, but I don't think that Denver gets their best effort. So it's either that game or a Memphis game where we're not sure if we're going to get 100% Ja Morant or not. One of those 2 games is a good win for Denver. So that's 3 games. And we already talked about Houston's schedule. So Denver has the high possibility of, again, being able to host a lot of playoff games in the Western Conference. I think they're going to go for it, and I think they're going to get it with the healthy Nikola Jokic, who's been resting that elbow that's been beat up on. Big Dudes has been boxing on it. Let's just be completely honest. That elbow's been pretty gnarly. It's just a question of, if those other 4 games, how they're going to treat those, or how they're going to win those games. I think that the coach and the staff is going to look at that at their standings right now. I think they're going to, at that time, around that April 6th time, around that Indiana game, I think they're going to look and see how they've been performing. And then they're going to determine right then if they're going to rest guys like Russell Westbrook, who's, a little bit older, and give their vets some rest, and give the younger guys some ability to play because they feel that either they've locked in that 3 spot and Lakers aren't catching them. Sorry, Lakers are not going to catch Houston. They're not going to catch Denver. Both the Lakers have the second worst schedule out of those 4 teams. Denver having the best, and there's too much infighting in order for the Lakers to actually make a good dent. They'd have to go on this historic run, and I just don't think it's worth it for JJ Redick. I think that the 4th seed is probably cap right now. I mean, it had to be an epic collapse by Denver and Houston in order for the Lakers to go any higher than that, and I don't think it's personally worth it, except for maybe being able to televise more games in crypto.com. But if you're Denver, I think that you're sitting pretty good looking at the 2 spot right now versus a Houston team that's gotta slay some dragons in order for them to stay at the 2 spot. Flip that over. Let's flip that over. Let's go East Coast right now. Because if you got it, then you got it. If you don't, then don't flaunt it. Okay, Cavs lost another one. Cavs lost another one last night. I don't know what's going on with this team. These guys start losing against some teams that make me almost scratch my head, because when you go, hey, how did you guys lose that game yesterday? Well, let me show you. Let's go to we're gonna find this game from yesterday that they lost. Yeah. How? Well, they played a Tim Hardaway Jr. That's how they lost yesterday. Tim Hardaway Jr. went for like 30 bag yesterday, man. That was crazy. Yo, sometimes, and this is what we're so all right. I feel like we keep saying the same thing about Donovan Mitchell teams. The same thing that we said about Chris Paul for the longest time. Great player individually, can get teams to a certain point. After that certain point, tell me if I'm wrong, year after year after year, doesn't matter where in the playoffs that they are, they get to a certain point and they get capped by physicality and one bad game. Physicality and one bad game. It's just one bad game from that individual player seems to has this domino effect. And a team like Detroit, who has no fear at this point. I mean, they got my candidate for most improved player in Cade Cunningham, and possibly coach of the year. I mean, this team could win 2 awards, possibly 3 if you want to try to stretch the truth a little bit. This Detroit team don't fear nobody. They looked at LeBron and said, we're giant killers. They looked at Cleveland and said, we got the axe for this Paul Bunyan, like Paul Bunyan to these tall redwoods right now. They look at teams, they size them up, and they said, oh, what? How does that Tony Stark line go in Civil War? Oh, we got a Cade Cunningham. Like, that's literally how Motor City, and they had their first winning season in 9 seasons. Was it 2016 the last time that they had a winning season? And with Cleveland having these Freudian slips against teams like Tim Hardaway Jr. is no scrub. He's been a pivotal player on a lot of teams that have made the playoffs. Miami, Dallas, Golden State, and now Detroit. No scrub. His ability to score in the double digits, unprecedented. One of the better 3-point shooters, a very tough player indeed. But if you're Cleveland, and if you were supposedly this team that was being able to boast People are voting Evan Mobley as Defensive Player of the Year. And there are games like this one where I struggle to see it because Evan Mobley is a starter and they depend on him more for his rebounding and his ability to score on the interior. And in today's league, I believe it's very hard to do both. It's very rare to do both. You're in MVP territory, like Jokic and SGA, if you're able to do both. But it's rare that you get to DPOY without you being able to show not just statistically, but in important games like a possible 1-4, 1-5 matchup, Cleveland and Detroit, and not be able to show it. And for all the respect and everything that I give to Tim Hardaway Jr., it's Tim Hardaway Jr., y'all. It's not Cade. And y'all lost. It's the 1 seed in the East. Boston's looking like this might be free lunch for us today, y'all. Sitting there at the number 2 spot, only 4 games down. Let's look at the rest of Cleveland's schedule because suspect. And number 1 seeds do this. They drop games that make you kind of scratch your head. Like there's a reason why you're the number 1 seed. Sometimes it's just because that's how the schedule fell to you. Like it's not like they get to pick their games like NCAA teams. But these guys, first of all, I just want to again, this green 1, 2, 3, 4. That's that 22 game. Jeez. I see nothing but green. It's absolutely ridiculous time for Cleveland. And then they did it again. Cleveland's got the Clippers coming up at home. And then they got New York at home. 2 playoff teams right there. Sacramento, play-in team. Chicago, play-in team. Indiana, playoff team. New York, playoff team. Indiana, playoff team. They have nothing but they have an easy, their only real road trip is at Sacramento. That's the furthest that they have to travel. This is hopefully that Detroit game was a wake the heck up type of moment for them, because I think if you're Cleveland and the league, especially the Eastern Conference, you have 3 teams right there that smell blood in the water. You have the defending champions, Boston Celtics. They don't respect you, okay, as the number 1 overall seed. They didn't respect you from the season's jump. We played you guys a couple times. Yeah, we may have lost, but the way that we lost still smells suspect to us. Donovan-led Mitchell team, we have faith in our guards. We like, oh, you guys have a Donovan Mitchell. Don't we have the Finals MVP? Don't we have the best 1-2 guard in the NBA combo in the NBA right now, especially in the East? I think so. You got New York that's been winning without their best star. All shout out to Cat. All right, Karl Anthony Towns, much love and respect to you, man. Big stretches the floor, man. I'm sure that you're watching these NCAA this NCAA tournament right now with a big smile on your face, seeing how everything is panning out right now, but your team didn't make it. Hey, it is what it is. But nonetheless, Jalen Brunson is the best player on that team, and they're doing it with a short rotation, and they're still finding ways to win some games. New York is very gritty. And then right there at number 4, again, these are teams that just are looking at you and they don't respect you. Sorry. The Pacers. I think the players respect the game, and I think they respect their opponent. But I think if the Pacers cared, that they could blow through a team like Cleveland. They're young enough, they're tough enough to be able to stack up against these teams that are in front of them. I just don't think that they care enough. I don't think that they prepare enough. I mean, yeah, these guys are 13 out of 450, so I'm not going to take away from their professionalism, but I strongly suggest that if Cleveland were to take their position as a number 1 seed seriously, They get through that schedule. They sit down New York, they sit down Indiana at the table and say, listen, thank you for coming. We appreciate your donation. Your time has been most valuable to us, but we'll be on our merry way now. And show them all the door. But I just don't think that Donovan Mitchell led teams at this point in his career, unless he shows us something different. It's like part of the reason why, as he goes, so does the offense for Cleveland. And it's not for me saying that, oh, all that Cleveland is Donovan Mitchell. No, I'm not saying that. But when you are the guy that gets paid the money, okay? I mean, shout out to Darius Garland, okay? Who is their product, okay? Is Cleveland's product. But you don't pay a guy bag money and get less than bag performance and say that it's not his team. That's asinine. That's why Dallas is so up in arms about giving up Luka Doncic, because it was Luka Doncic's team, even though Kyrie was right there carrying games. Kyrie's a champion. Luka is not. You want to tell me that it's Kyrie, it's not Luka Doncic's team? Donovan Mitchell's been there. He's given us great playoffs starting from the bubble. That's how he made his name. Cleveland is literally one bad playoff series away from blowing this team up. And Donovan Mitchell might be a causality of that. As we've seen with Chris Paul, I don't think that this team survives if they don't make at least the conference finals. And even then, they got to make the finals. I don't think that you put out this type of performance, you don't get those great win streaks throughout the season, setting records, without going pretty deep into the playoffs. Because if you don't, sorry, wash my hands of you. I love you. Someone else could pick up the bag. Send Donovan Mitchell to New York like it was originally projected when he was looking at teams anyway. Number 2. Number 2 spot. Boston Celtics. I don't think I can talk enough about the Boston Celtics without saying NBA champion Boston Celtics. Defending NBA champion Boston Celtics who are trying to go back-to-back. And I think right now Cleveland is low-key, is showing a little bit too much ability on how Boston could basically snatch the opportunity away from this team. Jason Tatum rolled his ankle a couple weeks ago, and Boston still managed to, who clinched the Atlantic, okay? And in those 2 weeks, continued winning. Of course, they played teams like Miami, Brooklyn, played Utah. It's an easier schedule. Still played Phoenix. They still won. It wasn't like their closest loss or the closest win was against Brooklyn, and they were playing with their food at that time. But that was fresh off. I believe that was about a game or so removed from the JT ankle roll. And the ankle roll happened in that Oklahoma City game. Win streak. I mean, winners win, okay? So, again, if I'm going to give respect to one team for being 13 of 450, I'm going to give respect to every other team being 13 of 450. Being that you play the team that's in front of you, beat the team that's in front of you, and Boston shows us how to do that, and that they're a championship team. They don't let teams think that they're vulnerable. That's the prop. Boston Celtics play with their food sometimes, or they're missing a player or personnel. that number 2 spot is only number 2 spot in name only. I believe Boston Celtics is the biggest threat to come out of the East right now. Remainder of their schedule. Memphis, Miami, Phoenix, New York, and Orlando. We're not talking about Washington or Charlotte, okay? The last 2 games versus Charlotte are at home. They're back-to-back. Sleeper games, okay? Just throw those out the window. If they get the games against Memphis, Miami, Phoenix, and New York, if they get all 4 of those games, Boston Celtics are number 1 seed. I'll say it right now. They get those 4 wins, Boston Celtics are the number 1 overall seed. I'm not talking about tiebreaker or anything like that. I'm talking about they're going to get that outright. Yeah, they could play with their food against Washington, who, again, that's the Washington team that beat the Denver Nuggets way on a Jordan Poole wing and a prayer. Ayo. But again, they got to go up against Orlando. Very tough team. I think that's the one team that they're going to need to make sure that they got all their marbles up against, because if they lose against that game going into the playoffs, I don't think that that's good for their psyche, for being able to get prepared. So if you guys are trying to talk about futures bets and how deep Boston can go, if you're not trying to be a homer like some of our guys here at TSA are, pay attention to that game and pay attention to the New York game. Those are the 2 games where Boston could either be tuning up and then show toughness and show grit that they've shown before, and be able to show that they're well prepared for not only taking over that number 1 spot that Cleveland has, but show that they're up and ready for the playoffs overall. Pay attention to those 2 games, because those are 2 tough teams. Big, thick. Like you come out of there feeling that you've played against a tough team, and those guys are trying to get ready for playoffs too. Last but not least, 3 spot. We just talked about New York Knicks. I think that's as deep as we can go without completely going off of every other team. We still got we're going to go for a little bit longer, guys. Don't worry. We got some time today. New York Knicks beat Milwaukee yesterday in a game where Giannis had a 30-burger, and against a team where they're still trying to figure out Damian Lillard for Milwaukee. Supposedly he's going to be back and ready for the end of the season, but that blood clot, man, and more specifically DVT, which we know is a big thing of the season, and all of us started becoming WebMDs when that happened to Wemby, trying to figure out what a DVT meant. And so with all of our research and knowledge now, we know how serious that would be for Damian Lillard, especially given his age and the implications of that, and the implications of him being missing for the playoffs. So Knicks beat that team. But Milwaukee has more games left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games left to go. One of them being today against Portland, who still believes that they can make it the play-in, by the way. Philly, then Cleveland. Talked about the implication of that game for Cleveland. Play in Atlanta. They got a pretty horrible schedule to end their season. So New York might be trying to wait for Brunson to come back and just saying, hey, let's kind of slow play this a little bit. We'll pick and choose our opponents. Not really the best thing in the world, but home against Portland, home against Philadelphia. Okay, cool. 2 good tune-up games. Let's go. April 2nd versus Cleveland. Playoff implications indeed. Still don't know what the status is of Jalen Brunson and when he'll be available coming back. Then they go to Atlanta. I don't put Jalen Brunson in that game versus Dyson Daniels. I don't want the possible DPOY trying to make a name for himself by hemming up my point guard, especially for that being one of the first games coming back. You got Phoenix at home. You got Boston at home. Both of those teams trying to show me something. We just talked about Boston. We probably won't get to Phoenix today. Probably have to get to them next week. Just depending on how the playoff outlook is looking. Because again, the whole Big Three thing, we're trying to figure that out. But then they go to Detroit. New York goes to Detroit. They end the season on Detroit and then Cleveland. Forget Brooklyn. Because they end away. They're at Cleveland and they're home again. They're at Detroit and they're home against Cleveland, the New York Knicks. I don't like this right now because it could be to go from Boston, to go from the 2 seed to the 4 seed. No, the 5 seed, and then the 1 seed, possibly the 2 seed at that point. Bing, bang, boom. All those teams are pissed. All those teams are tasting desperate, especially if you go to Cleveland that first time around and you beat Cleveland, who's still basically making some fine tunes and tweaks to see if they really getting the most juice out of Donovan Mitchell right now. I don't like this if I'm New York. I don't like this because it's Coach Tibbs. I don't like this because they consistently have that short rotation issue, lingering injury bug. And did you guys know that Mikal Bridges is the most traveled player in the NBA right now? He's covered distance-wise the most distance in the NBA. Yeah, go look up that stat. Mikal Bridges right now is leading the league in miles. I don't like that if I'm New York and I'm trying to make a deep playoff run. You got to have health. You got to have strength against these teams that are coming up. There are 2 teams in front of you that one of them doesn't like going fast and one of them doesn't like getting beat up, and you have the capability of doing both. You're going to need all of your players. And to say that one of those guys that you're going to be depending on has been doing darn close to an ultra marathon, shut it down. This is the TSA Hoop Show. I'm your guy, JR. Overtime, baby. Let's go. We just did the 1 through 3 spots. If you guys are just jumping in, I appreciate you guys tuning in. We're talking about playoffs. I think it's the first time in the last few weeks that I've actually stretched out one topic for this far. And that's because there's so much to talk about, so much basketball content to go over. I want to now quickly get into. I was going to quickly remind you guys. I'm going to go ahead and hide the ticket real quick because they know where to catch us. NBA Seasons Awards. We put the current voting set. It doesn't reflect all of our individual votes, but we'd like to put the best and the brightest comments so far about where we're voting at as far as end of season awards on the sportsaffiliation.com. Now, just going to go ahead and throw this up there. TSA's very own, and where we got some of our votes right now. We are on week 2. Week 3 will be coming out later this evening. We'll be able to go on to, again, sportsaffiliation.com. Just look under the NBA section, or it'll be one of the top posts today. We'll make sure to attach that one to my handle, of course, at 4F Apollo. We'll be able to repost that to the Sports Affiliation X account. If you guys want to try to find it there, you'll see some retweets and everything about it. But we have our voting blog where we go week to week and we vote these guys in. And some things have not changed, like SGA at MVP. And the reason why SGA hasn't moved from the MVP spot as far as us posting it is because the guys that like to argue against it are slow playing it and want to tell you at the last second who they think the MVP is going to be. And I know it's going to be Nikola Jokic, and it's not a wrong answer. Mr. News said, worried about Wolves this year. Placement has gotten tight. Good luck to your team in the playoffs. Thank you, Mr. New. We appreciate that. Good luck to your team too. You're worried about the Wolves. If you watch previous episodes of the show, hopefully you get a chance to watch those. We have put your team in the 6th spot, which was our far out prediction 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think your Wolves are in a good place, and we'll try to make sure to talk about them in a bit. But then we get some flip-flopping going around. Stephon Castle's now up there as possible Rookie of the Year. JJ Redick got a vote. JJ Redick got a vote, and I want to put this out there. This was before those Chicago Bull games, okay? This was before LeBron James did what he did. This was before giving up double-digit, before 40-point quarters, okay? So don't kill the messenger, okay? We're just putting it up there. 6th man of the year, Peyton Pritchard. Peyton Pritchard's name is going to be up there between him and Cade Cunningham for most improved player. We put our thoughts up there for that. We talked about Cade Cunningham earlier, what the Detroit team is doing. And I think someone said it made a great reasoning for voting for a guy like Cade Cunningham as most improved player. You can be the best in the sport and still improve. If, say, the bar is here as far as where the cap is at, and all players are performing here, okay, then the next year, the whole thing does this. This player, if they were the cap and they improved, they should be given consideration for most improved player. And Cade Cunningham, given his draft class, his improvement as the best player, because it would have been Jaden Ivey had Jaden Ivey been in the season. Smash those likes. Yeah, don't forget to smash those likes, guys. Oh, we're still going. Don't forget to smash those likes. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, but we're still going. We still got a lot of talk to do today. Push the time, and I made sure that to reward you guys for waiting for me, so I appreciate it. Cade Cunningham in there for most improved player. Okay. DPOY, again, we got to vote for Evan Mobley. I still personally feel that Dyson Daniels is going to get it. Dyson Daniels is one whole steal on average better than the rest of the league. Given that it's only technically his 2nd season as a full-fledged NBA player, again, he was a G League Ignite player, which I think the team has since been dissolved. But he was one of those players like Scoot Henderson, who went the route of going into the NBA via utilizing that 1 year to try to improve themselves and against G League talent, against the top league talent. Got traded from New Orleans, got a bigger, better role, but most specifically, like everything that has happened with him to improve his minutes is because they were needed. His starting is because it was needed, because he is a starter. But he's played into this role to where teams have to scheme for him. I think that he is still my top candidate for DPOY, but Evan Mobley still has 8 games to make a case for me. Some of those teams that they're playing against as Cleveland are going to have to score under 100 points for me. They're going to have to score a lot of those points from the perimeter. They're not going to have to be able to score inside where Evan Mobley plays. That's what it's going to take for me to be able to switch from Dyson right now to Mobley. And mainly because I'm going to get off my soapbox here in a second. If the league is scoring a majority of its points, if the league's majority of its shots is coming from the 3-point line, and you have a player that's defending that well versus a player that doesn't technically exist a lot out there, I'm going to go with the player that's more actively on ball. You can argue plus minus with me all you want. Evan Mobley doesn't have it for me right now, but we did vote for them for Evan Mobley, and we'll be posting once the awards come out. We'll be posting who we voted for throughout this time that we've been doing this blog. We'll be giving you guys that raw information so that way you can see it. because accountability and visual and having a visual attachment to what we are saying, I think helps you guys know how thorough we are, how sincere we are about giving you nothing but hoops. We don't care about the drama. Continuing on. Those are interseason awards. I'm going to continue to find out again at sportsaffiliation.com. We need to do this right now. If we do nothing else today, the NBA is continuing to have a personnel problem. And as fans, I think although we deserve a little bit of transparency, we still haven't gotten a reason for Mike Brown being fired from Sacramento. So when Memphis fires its head coach 9 games left into the season, I don't expect. Well, okay, let me go back. Memphis did not fire its head coach. Memphis and its head coach mutually parted ways. Okay. Taylor Jenkins and the Memphis Grizzlies mutually parted ways, okay? That's different from saying that outright that he was fired. Now, the GM has since come out with a statement saying that they felt that being without Taylor Jenkins for the remainder of the season and going forward for Memphis's future was a better thing. And this is where I said I would like to go ahead and try to get a little bit of insight into how the fans feel. So this came from a post. I'm just gonna go ahead and pop it up on the screen here. Let me just do this, and I'm gonna let this breathe for a little bit. You guys tell me.
The Grizzlies just fired head coach Taylor Jenkins, and I know a lot of you are very confused. What? The Grizzlies have been at the top of the West. What are they doing? The playoffs are about to.
Let me see if I can get the audio up on this thing as well. Oh, audio is just not playing. That's it is what it is.
The Grizzlies just fired head coach Taylor.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do instead. So this is the account Molly Morrison at Molly Hannah M, who posted about the Taylor Jenkins firing, and she basically goes on to say that the gives her reasoning. It gives the reasoning why as to one of the reasons why they believe that Jenkins was fired. How things building up to a certain point were why Jenkins was fired at this point in the season. And I like all the points that this person gives for someone, and I commented to their to this post. In fact, I said, basically, as someone that doesn't have 100% eyes, even 10% eyes on the Grizzlies, like we watch the Grizzlies. I watch the Grizzlies as a Lakers fan because of the history between one of the Grizzlies teams that they go on to mention, that's had that history with the Lakers going back and forth and all that, with the whoop that trick and all that stuff. That's why I watch the Memphis Grizzlies, just to see how they progress beyond that point, because they're a team that, as a basketball fan, that I've said, when healthy, they are this seed, top 4, right? Of course, John Morant hasn't been healthy all season and all this other stuff, but it's the history of the fan base with how the team has been run, and they go into that. And you should watch that there, and you give us your thoughts later as to why you think Taylor Jenkins was fired and if it was justified. But overall, I think that NBA still has a personnel issue because they don't have good moments of when they make personnel choices. They don't have people at the helm to be able to assess and say, and I know it's bad because I'm talking about someone's job and someone's livelihood. But it's interesting to see how someone at a particular position, how they affect the overall performance of that organization allows everyone to live or die financially from that performance. And I say that because between, again, the firing in Sacramento and everything that's fallen out since then, of course, one of the big trades being De'Aaron Fox leaving Sacramento. Okay, so that still pisses me off. I don't know why that pisses me off so much. I think it's mainly because I like to see strong teams get stronger and not just this randomness that's been happening of, oh, so what was the real problem? Because no one can actually point the finger and say, oh, this was the real problem. The Memphis Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins with 9 games to go. They had a game against the Los Angeles Lakers, and I understand that the personnel currently involved are not 100%. But do it after the season, guys. Come on. If you knew that this was coming, if you felt this way, start that way from the jump. Like, don't dangle a carrot in front of us as NBA fans that we're possibly going to get this Taylor Jenkins team that's on a revenge tour that's going to be bringing everyone back stronger than ever. Don't present that to us and then give us this. I think it upsets me, not just from a basketball perspective as a fan, but from a basketball perspective as far as the product itself, and from someone that works, okay, from someone that has a 9 to 5. I've been subject to management turnover, high management turnover before at untimely times for one reason or another without cause. It incensed me then, and without much context, it pisses me off now. It may have been due, but it was the wrong time to do it. Especially for a team that could possibly get into the first, maybe second round. Of course, they have to go through the Lakers, so that's neither here nor there. That's this week. Not much to talk about as far as what's going on this week. We're staying away from the money this week just because these last 10 games, everything's loopy. We don't know exactly who's all playing and who's not. So if you guys are deep into your fantasy runs right now, make sure to continue to watch those find those clips from Coach Craig. He posts up those DFS lineups. They have been helping me immensely to get at least into the playoffs. I've been knocked out all of my playoffs, but they've been helping a lot of other guys. Make sure to follow those guys as far as what to do for this week. So no fun bets this week, but fun predictions. All right. Here's a fun prediction for you guys. Chicago wins 2 games after. This is my fun prediction. This is more of the end of season prediction. We're gonna have another show before this, but like this here, Chicago is gonna have a fun run into the playoffs. They're gonna get into the play-in tournament. They're gonna stay at the 9 seed. They're gonna play Miami. They're gonna win it into that next 8-9 game in order to get that last playoff game for the 8th spot. They're gonna win it. And they're going to get 2 games against Boston. That's my fun prediction. So you guys lock that in here. We're going to see how that happens, how that plays out. Other fun prediction, I just talked about it before. Minnesota. We'll see you guys in the playoffs, okay? That's about it for this week's show. We did not go over. We're actually 15 minutes under because I promised an hour and a half, but that's all I got for this week. And that Taylor Jenkins firing has just got me so upset. I'm going to have to go take a lap or two. I'm not going to run as far as Mikal Bridges did. I'll tell you that much. If you guys have any questions, you guys have any comments, you guys have anything you need us to address, make sure to put them in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow us on X. Don't forget to go onto our website at thesportsaffiliation.com. Thanks to JC. Thanks to Rico for all your votes this week. Guys, make sure that you guys go vote. The MVP and awards are all, the processes are all up for grabs. You guys can all go vote. Go to thesportsaffiliation.com. We will provide you the link. Don't forget to follow me at 4F Apollo. With nothing else, love, peace, and chicken grease. You guys enjoy the week. Go Lakers.